Welcome to you all for joining our second event in our national webinar series, sponsored by Virgin Media O2. We're absolutely delighted that you could all join us this evening for what promises to be a very informative session on apprenticeships. Okay, so as I mentioned, I'm Jenny Austin. I'm an account director at the School Outreach Company, and I will be giving you just a very short overview of what we do as an organisation. Then we'll be hearing from Siobhan Williams, who's the Business Engagement Manager at UCAS, who will be sharing some information about apprenticeships, the application process, to help everyone on the call understand a little bit more about apprenticeship routes. And then finally, we'll be hearing from Narisa Anwar, who's the Student Recruitment Attraction Officer from KPMG, who will be discussing apprenticeship opportunities and top tips for applications for her organisation. So welcome everybody, and thank you so much for joining us this evening. So as I mentioned, this is the second event in our series, and we do have another one coming up in May, which will be with Nestlé. So please look out for the invitation, which will be distributed shortly to join that call. Please also follow us on LinkedIn and Twitter. Our handle is there at @tstock_company for further about information and other events that we'll be managing. So who are we, the School Outreach Company? For those of you who may not be familiar with our work, we are now the UK's largest school outreach provider. We act primarily as a link between hiring organisations and schools and colleges and their communities. We're currently working with circa 95% of all secondary schools and colleges throughout the UK. And as an organisation, we're committed to raising levels of gender equality and ethnic diversity and, of course, social mobility. And there are just some of the employers there that we work with. So for those of you who may not be familiar with us, why is this topic of school outreach so relevant? There are increasingly more and more options available for students and school leavers. Certainly from the traditional routes that some of us on the call may have taken back when we were at school. And understanding these options can be hard to navigate. So through sessions like this and other webinars that we hold and the publications that we share with the schools and the students, we really hope to equip students, parents and carers and careers leads and teachers in schools with up-to-date information to help students make an informed decision about their futures. Teachers and especially parents, we know, have a huge influence over what decisions are made, so giving the right advice and having up-to-date advice is really important. Apprenticeships and the careers that they can lead into have developed hugely over the last 10 years and perceptions haven't quite evolved at the same pace. So hopefully you will be enlightened a little bit this evening. Hiring organisations are also making huge investments and increasing the numbers of apprenticeships that they take on. Certainly a lot of the employer clients that we represent are increasing the volume of hires next year. And due to political and economic and social changes, apprenticeships are increasingly becoming a very popular alternative. So I just wanted to share some insights and statistics from the work that we're doing over the last year. There has been a 64% growth in apprenticeships since 2014, so rapid growth in this as an alternative route. In 2022, over 50% of university applicants also registered an interest in apprenticeships. You can now, believe it or not, become a GP through an apprenticeship programme, so giving you a bit of an insight into the varied routes now that are available for students, plus many other roles that you perhaps wouldn't have expected through an apprenticeship route. It is estimated that by 2026 there will be 1 million applicants for universities in the UK, but sadly only spaces for 650,000 students. And the average graduate programme has over 50 applications per vacancy, whereas apprenticeship applications are far lower than this, and therefore supporting that this route is becoming an increasingly attractive alternative.
Hi, and thank you for having me today and coming to listen to me. It's great to be here. So if I just talk you through the agenda first of what I'm going to talk about. So the first area I'm going to talk about is the seven different myths, friendship myths that we've managed to bust through UCAS. I'm then going to talk to you about what apprenticeships are, because I think there is a lot of confusion out there about exactly what an apprenticeship is. So hopefully I can help put that straight for you. I'm also going to talk about who can apply, when you can apply, how you can apply, and where you can find some more information to help support you in any applications that you decide to make in the future. So the myths. So all too often, lots of people have opinions about apprenticeships, but they're not always correct. So here are some common misconceptions about what an apprenticeship is. First of all, that apprenticeships aren't as good as degrees. This is totally untrue. If you took a degree apprenticeship, you would come out with the same degree award as somebody who was taking a full-time traditional undergraduate degree. It is the same degree certificate. Quite often it's universities who are awarding the certificate to you at the end of it. It has the same value. So please don't think that a degree apprenticeship is any less in value. That certificate at the end of it has any less value than a full-time degree route. You can access most careers through apprenticeships, and there are so many different levels that you can go in. And the levels will very much depend on what you feel comfortable with and what that career specifically needs you to go into at a beginner level if you are a school leaver. Myth number 2, apprenticeships are for people who don't do well at school. That again is completely untrue. Since 2015, there have been degree level apprenticeships. Those apprenticeships have exactly the same kind of entry requirements as a normal degree would do if you were doing it full time. Every different apprenticeship is going to have different entry requirements. So some may require GCSEs to get in, some may require your A levels or IS levels or equivalent to get in. So there are lots of different levels and lots of different entry requirements. So you've just got to choose the one that's right for you and that you feel comfortable going into, and you have the entry requirements to match to go into. The other thing is that you're also going to have the entry requirements of the actual job role, as well as the academic entry requirements. So you just need to make sure you match both of those before you apply. Myth number 3, apprenticeships are only available in vocational industries. Again, this is completely unfounded. There are so many different apprenticeship routes. So as Jenny mentioned earlier, you can now go into a doctor's apprenticeship. Well, from September, you can go into a doctor's apprenticeship. You can go into cybersecurity. You could go into business. You can even become a police constable under an apprenticeship program. You could become a journalist. You could even become an assistant puppet maker if you really wanted to. So there are so many different exciting and really varied options that aren't maybe your traditional apprenticeship careers that you may think of straight away, such as your bricklayer or your construction or maybe hair and beauty. There are still those career options available, but there are so many more on top of that as well. Myth number 4, apprentices don't do real jobs. This is completely untrue. They very much do real jobs. You are working a job. You will get support from your employer, from your trainer provider who is delivering the qualification, the course part for you. In most cases, you are considered an employee. I'm saying most cases because the Scottish Foundation is slightly different. But in all other cases, you are considered an employee, so you will have the same rights as the employee as well. Myth number 5, apprenticeships are poorly paid. Completely untrue. There is a minimum wage that they need to be paying for your apprenticeship. It will vary on your age, though, so that will be different depending what age you're at. If you look at degree level apprenticeships, I think the starting salary, well, no, the average salary nationally is £22,500 according to Glassdoor for a degree apprenticeship. So that's quite an amazing salary for an apprenticeship. But the other thing to consider is that lots of apprenticeships will have different starting salaries or different wages, and quite a lot of them will go up every year that you're staying with the company. So don't always look at that beginning wage, and always find out what the wage will be if you stayed on and you were fully qualified as well, because quite often that's very different from the starting wage you're on as an apprenticeship. Myth number 6, apprenticeships are only for school leavers. Completely untrue again. You have to be 16 or over to do an apprenticeship, but apart from that, there is no upper age limit for an apprenticeship. So there are lots of people out there who are making complete career changes midway through their life, and using apprenticeships as a tool to do that. Myth number 7, apprenticeships won't lead to good careers. Completely untrue again. Whilst you're doing that apprenticeship, you're actually building up a reputation for yourself within that company. And not only that, you're getting work experience. So when you finish with that qualification, you will then have work experience to add to your CV, which will put you in a really good position when you're looking for a job after you finish your apprenticeship. And if you stay on with the same company after the apprenticeship, then you'll have built yourself a really good reputation with a good work ethic. So they really can lead to great careers. So what is an apprenticeship? Well, an apprenticeship is a chance to have a job, to study for a qualification at the same time, and have a wage. The only slight exception for that, again, is the Scottish Foundation Apprenticeship, which is unpaid because you'll be doing that as part of your school. So the easiest way I can explain the different levels of apprenticeships is by comparing it to what you might be doing right now. So if you are a year 10 or a year 11 student, you are probably studying for your GCSEs. Now, that is a level 2 qualification. So this is for England, Northern Ireland and Wales. If you are an A-level, an AS level student, a T-level student, or a BTEC level 3 student, you're studying level 3 qualifications. So if you keep that in your head, it really helps with apprenticeships, because apprenticeships work in levels too. So if you were looking at a level 2 apprenticeship, so that is also called an intermediate apprenticeship, and that is the equivalent to a GCSE. A level 3 apprenticeship is also called an advanced apprenticeship in England, and that is the equivalent to maybe an A-level or an AS level. Anything above that within England, so your level 4 to 7, is a higher apprenticeship. And it's worth pointing out that a level 6 is a degree apprenticeship and level 7 is a master's apprenticeship. And you can do an apprenticeship in England all the way up to master's level, which is an amazing opportunity. In Wales, they have slightly different names again. So your level 2 apprenticeship would be called a foundation apprenticeship. Your level 3 apprenticeship may also be called just a normal apprenticeship. And your level 4 to 7 again would be called a higher apprenticeship. And in Northern Ireland, a level 2 is called level 2 apprenticeship, level 3 is called level 3 apprenticeship, and level 4 to 7 is a higher apprenticeship. So we all have different names, but they all work on very similar levels. Moving on to Scotland, the qualification system is slightly different in Scotland. So an SCQF level 4 to 6 is a foundation apprenticeship, but SCQF level 5, not foundation, SCQF level 4 to 6 is the foundation apprenticeship, and SCQF level 5 plus can be also a modern apprenticeship, and an SCQF level 8 to 11 can also be known as a graduate apprenticeship. So some of those levels and some of those names can actually cross over, as you can see. What you're doing now, if you're in Scotland and you're doing a national level 5, that's an SCQF level 5 qualification. And if you're in Scotland doing a Scottish Hire, then that's an SCQF level 6 qualification. So that hopefully puts it in a bit of perspective and helps you relate the apprenticeship levels to levels that you're actually studying right now. Who can start an apprenticeship? Well, anyone over the age of 16 can start an apprenticeship. Anyone who is not in full-time education. However, your foundation apprenticeship in Scotland is taken within education. Apprenticeships in Scotland, Wales or England require you to be living in the same country as the actual apprenticeship that's taking place. Apprenticeships in Northern Ireland require you to be employed or be about to take up paid employment in Northern Ireland and be working a minimum of 21 hours per week on a permanent contract. So as long as you meet all those, it's fairly open for who can apply to those. When can you apply? Well, unfortunately, unlike university, it's not quite the same with one big deadline for in-time applications. So applications can open and close throughout the actual academic year. Every employer will have a different opening and closing date, which makes it really hard for you as a student, unfortunately, to have one set time or one window for applying for applications. So my recommendation is that you just keep on refreshing and making sure you're checking those job board pages for apprenticeships, because new ones will be coming up all the time, depending on a company's requirement. The larger organisations may have multiple application processes, so just because the number of applications they're getting, which means that they tend to recruit a little bit earlier so that they can sift through all the applicants and get them through all the appropriate stages. If you're looking at higher apprenticeships, so that's level 4 and above, and they have a September-October start, the companies will tend to advertise the academic year beforehand. So say you're in year 12 right now and you're looking for an apprenticeship, maybe a degree level apprenticeship that will start after your year 13, then you'll probably find that the employer will start advertising those apprenticeships during your year 13. That's not all of them, but certainly a large proportion of them will be. So you really need to be ready. And if you're in year 12 right now, my recommendation would be making a wish list of all those companies that you are interested in, so that you're ready to go for next year and you don't miss any of those opening and closing dates. How can you apply? So initial applications tend to be a CV and covering letter, or they might be an application form, or some people might have apps or on-site application forms. Applications may go through the provider. Higher apprenticeships like degree level apprenticeships tend to go through an employer, I'd say, in the majority. But they could go through either the education provider or the employer. And the really exciting thing about apprenticeships is that you can apply for them exactly the same time as you're applying for university. So don't feel like you have to make a choice of either applying for university or applying for apprenticeships. If you're not sure, you can apply for both. There is absolutely nothing stopping you from withdrawing your application from either an apprenticeship or university, depending on what you decide later on during the application process. How can you apply? Well, so with your CV and covering letter, a CV is a bit like a snapshot or a report of yourself. It's about 2 pages long in the UK. It very clearly states, and I say clearly because it has to be very easy to read and very quick to read at a glance for a manager or an employer. It clearly states information like your contact details, your education to date, what you're taking that you're still waiting for grades for, and also your work experience. A covering letter is usually sent alongside your CV, and it goes into a little bit more detail. So instead of being report and bullet point focused. It's going to be more in paragraphs, and it's going to say, it's going to put a little bit more context. So if a job is asking you to have strong communication skills, then you're going to go into a little bit detail saying, I have strong communication skills and I have demonstrated this during this specific course where I had to present to X amount of people, which I did so confidently and answered questions afterwards. So it's just where you're backing up the skills with the evidence, and then as well as that, you're showing your passion for that industry, for that company, and for that particular subject area that your apprenticeship is going to be around. If you need any help, we have advice and guidance on our UCAS pages on how to write a CV. So please pop over there and have a look if you've never done one before. How can I apply? Again, with an application form, it's very similar to a CV. And if you have a CV and covering letter that you've already worked on, it's quite possible that some of the information you can even copy and paste over to an application form. The only difference is that it's probably got more specific questions asking for examples of where you've demonstrated certain skills or experiences, and it usually asks you to demonstrate your passion for the role within those questions as well. One massive hint is that sometimes application forms can be a little bit cheeky, and they can actually not specifically ask you to demonstrate those skills. Sometimes they can just have a very large box saying additional information or supporting information. If it is a massive box and you can see there's a very large word limit next to it, and you've not been asked any questions about your skills beforehand, it's a very big hint that that's probably the place where you'll be talking about your skills and evidencing them and your passion for that company. So very similar to what you'd be putting into a covering letter. Have a CV prepared just in case, because sometimes application forms can ask you to attach a CV to the application in addition. What's after the form or the CV? Well, sometimes, and I'm not by no means saying that all these processes are going to be for every job you apply for. It very much depends on the company and the job role and how many applications they receive. But you are more than likely to have an in-person interview, which is going to be a set of questions that are likely to be asked, usually the same questions asked to every candidate. Please don't assume that they will just remember everything from your application form, because the interview is going to be quite likely treated as a completely separate process. So make sure the stuff you stated in your CV or your application form, don't be afraid to restate it in your interview, because they're not necessarily going to take it into account if you haven't said it in the interview. Also, make sure that you look at answering the questions in full, looking at things like your situation and the outcome for all your answers, and also make sure that you have a presentation prepared if they've asked for it, and make sure that you've stuck really carefully to the brief of what they've wanted for the presentation. So some interviews may ask you to actually present to people. There might be an online interview that could be an automated one, which basically means that you're on a computer screen with your video on and there's no one on the other side of the screen that you're answering the questions to. They can be a little bit daunting, but the best thing I could suggest doing is just finding some example questions online and just practicing. And sometimes you'll have it in front of an actual panel, and once again there may be a presentation involved in that. There could be psychometric testing, which is usually done online. They're usually timed. It might assess things like personality or your aptitudes for like numerical or verbal reasoning, and there's loads of practice tests online for you to do if you do get one of those. And then there could be something called an assessment centre, where they invite a huge pool of applicants to come in on the same day, and they might give you some group activity to do and see how well you work in teams and how well you do problem solving and things like that together. UCAS has loads of really good resources, so you've got the careers quiz that you can look at on our systems, which will give you some suggestions of jobs that you could apply for. There is also our industry guides, where you can look at particular sectors and see the different types of job roles that are available within those sectors. We have employer profiles as well, where you can look at early career options, and you can look at what companies typically offer them and see what they're like. Lots of video profiles on there as well. And the major tool that we have is our career finder. So there are so many vacancies on there. You can sign up, you can look for apprenticeship opportunities on there. It is the same sign-on as it is for your Hubs account. So if you signed up for UCAS Hubs, it's the same login on details. And it's a really good way to have a look at apprenticeships nearby you, look at the kind of skills that might be required. If you're in year 12, you can start doing that research for the kinds of companies that you might want to apply for next year. So it's a really good resource. And then also the other thing you do is get smart alerts for various positions, and then you'll get notified of new apprenticeships if you put in preferences like location, start date, preferred level, industry of interest. You have to have opted in for those alerts though. So if you know you're not very particularly good at checking all the time and hitting refresh all the time, then this might be a really good way to get lots of notifications in when something that's suitable has come in. That's all from me. There are lots of different social media platforms you can engage with us on. We are always releasing really good videos with interviews with apprentices. We've got loads and loads of resources online and on our site for apprenticeships. If you want to find out more information or talk to other people about it, please feel free to visit our site or to get in contact via our social media channels. Thank you very much.
Many thanks, Narissa. Over to you.
Hi, thank you for the introduction, Jenny, and a great overview, Siobhan, of apprenticeship opportunities and all the different levels. So hi, everyone. Thank you for those of you who are staying on for a few extra minutes. My name's Narissa, and I work as part of the student recruitment team at KPMG. And I'm here today to really highlight some of the fantastic opportunities that we have for future apprentices. I know there's quite a few teachers in the audience today, so I've got some hints and tips as well to help you support your students through the application process. So for those of you who might not have heard of KPMG, we are a global network of member firms, and we work to offer a range of business services to clients across the UK. So some of the clients that we work with, you can see on the screen there. We're really well known for our work in audit, but we also advise clients around tax, legal, consulting, deal advisory and technology services too. So just a little bit more about KPMG. So we are very proud to be a Times Top 50 employer for women. So we are in the 12th consecutive year. And we're also really well known for our work around social mobility. So just moving on to our apprenticeship roles, the main apprenticeship opportunities that we offer are listed on screen. So they are aligned with all of our main business areas. All of our apprenticeship opportunities, students are given the opportunity to work towards a world recognised qualification. So we have both level 3 apprenticeship opportunities, and students can work all the way up to a level 7 qualification depending on the business area that they've applied for. So the apprenticeships are a great way for students to come in straight after year 13, gain hands-on work experience. So they're given real work, real projects. They're treated as a really valued member of the team that they're aligned to. They get 1 day off work, so they get 1 day of study leave where they can work towards the qualification, and they also get a salary and also a competitive rewards package. So it's a fantastic alternative route for those who may not want to go to university and they want to go straight into work. So just wanted to quickly highlight academic requirements. So just to point out that our level 3 apprenticeships applicants can apply with just GCSEs. So it does differ from employer to employer, but we do have two business areas, so KBS Business Services and also Consulting Managed Services, where we only require 5 GCSEs between A star to C, so 4 to 9. For the remainder of our routes, so just listed there on screen, students will need a minimum of 120 UCAS points, but that will cover most UK and international qualifications. So whether that's a BTEC, A-levels or IB, an Irish Leaving Certificate, or also the Scottish equivalents too. There is the GCSE requirement as well, the same GCSE requirement, and students will also normally need a 5 or above in English and maths. We do really value contextual recruitment as well, so we do take into account socioeconomic background as well, plus any barriers that might have prevented a student from performing at the level that they were predicted. So again, just the rewards and benefits. So as Siobhan highlighted earlier, all apprentices do get a salary each month, but they also have access to the same employee benefits that any other employee at KPMG can have access to. So that does include private healthcare insurance, 6 days of volunteering, and a generous annual leave allowance. So just quickly wants to highlight our application process. It is very straightforward. I think some students do get a little bit apprehensive. Students do not need to write a long personal statement to apply to KPMG. They don't need to provide a CV. It is very objective. They just need to list the qualifications that they're working towards or they've already obtained. If they've got work experience, they can also list that, but it's not compulsory. After stage 1, after the initial screen, if they meet the academic eligibility, they'll be then invited to do an online business challenge. So we have a practice assessment on our website. It's really useful. Students have fed back that it's been really helpful in preparing them for the actual assessment. After this stage, they'll move on to stage 3. This is a delivering outcomes online video assessment. And then the final stage is that they'll be invited to a launch pad. So this is currently a virtual assessment process, but it's designed for students to really find out more about KPMG. They get to meet different stakeholders from the business, as well as current apprentices. So this is a little bit of, this is quite a quick overview of the application process because we don't have very long left, but we've got lots of detailed guidance on our website around this as well, should your students have any guidance. So the main things that we look for are the key strengths that are listed on this slide here. There are 11 of them. What I would really encourage you to do with your students is to get your students to think about perhaps the business area that they're interested in, why they might want to work for KPMG, and in particular their strength. Sometimes we do know that students struggle, especially if they may not have any previous work experience. But if you go onto our website, we've got lots of detailed guidance. So again, if you have students who are looking to apply to KPMG, it's just about starting conversations and getting students to think about how they might be able to demonstrate some of these core strengths. So we just have some top tips here for the benefit of parents and students, as well as teachers who might be supporting any applicants. So the number one tip is we would really encourage students to apply early. We do recruit on a rolling basis, and some roles do fill a little quicker than others, especially if they're linked to the main offices. Please encourage students to take their time when making an application, especially when inputting information around qualifications. And then If you do have students who are invited to our Launchpad assessment, do encourage them to be themselves. We really want to see students for who they are as people. And again, going back to the strengths, we would probably encourage careers advisors to maybe look at strength spotting exercises. So really get students to think about real life examples that show, for example, where they've collaborated with other people or they've been a strong communicator. Students will need to be specific. So one thing that we really encourage is for prospective apprentices to really use a STAR method throughout the interview process. So they will probably be familiar with this throughout school academically, especially when writing essays, but it's the same method when also answering interview questions. And again, research, we can't stress this enough. So for KPMG, it is normally only possible for students to apply for one apprenticeship opportunity in each recruitment cycle. So it's really important that students know which area they want to apply to and what office as well, because we do have offices all across the UK. And finally, we would really encourage students to be enthusiastic and confident, as difficult as it may be. We have designed the assessment process to recognise that the apprentices coming in are school leavers. So again, we won't be expecting students to know everything about KPMG. It is just more of an opportunity for them to find out more about KPMG and obviously for us to find out more about them. So really sorry I've had to very quickly zoom through all of that, but if we do have time for questions, please do put them in the chat box and I'm very happy to take those away from Jenny and get back to you all individually if you do have any questions following the event. Okay, thank you very much, Jenny.
Thank you so much, Narissa, and thank you all for those who've stayed on, which is actually the vast majority of you, to glean that really informative session. So thank you to everybody. We will, as Narissa mentioned, come back to those that have asked questions, which I think actually the bulk were for you, Narissa, so we will get back to you on those. Thank you, everybody, and enjoy the rest of your evening.